Time ceased to have meaning. There was only the darkness, the cold, and the sound. A symphony of suffering played in a sepulchral hall of concrete. The scrape of wool and canvas against the rough, gritty walls. The rasp of our own breathing, amplified and desperate in the confined space. The agonizingly slow drag of Dimitri's boots against the floor of the pipe. And behind us, the furious, muffled barking of the German dogs, a sound that drove us forward, a promise of the tearing teeth we were so narrowly escaping. My world had shrunk to the space directly in front of my face. There was no sky, no trees, no enemy to be seen, only the impenetrable black. My reclaimed PPSH-41, slung awkwardly over my back, dug into my spine. Its cold metal a constant reminder of the violence we had fled and the violence that surely awaited. The journey was a form of torture. My knees and elbows, already bruised, were scraped raw. The pain in my ribs from my fall into the ravine flared with every push, every agonizing inch forward. We moved as a single, suffering organism. Up front, a faint scraping and the occasional muttered curse told me Vasily was still clearing the path, pushing the heavy DP-28 ahead of him. Then came Pyotr, crawling backwards, his hands constantly on Dimitri to guide him, to monitor him, to keep his airway from being blocked. Then Dimitri, our terrible burden, our reason for this entire desperate gamble. Then me, pushing, guiding his legs, trying to absorb the jolts. And finally, Ivan, a silent, reassuring presence at the rear, the cork in the bottle, his body a shield against the horrors behind us. The barking slowly faded, replaced by a new terror. The ground above us began to tremble, a deep, bone-jarring vibration. The tanks, they were moving directly over our heads. The sound was no longer a distant rumble, but an overwhelming physical presence. A fine shower of dust and grit rained down from the ceiling of the pipe, getting in our eyes, our mouths. I could hear the immense weight, the squeal of the tracks, the roar of the Maybach engines. We were nothing but worms in the earth beneath a steel behemoth. A terrifying thought struck me. What if the weight was too much for this old pipe? What if it cracked? What if we were crushed in our own escape route? A deafening crump from somewhere nearby shook our concrete tomb violently. A German shell. More dirt cascaded from the ceiling. Dimitri, even in his morphine-induced stupor, let out a low moan. "Quiet, quiet now, Dima," I heard Pyotr whisper desperately in the dark. "Almost there. Be still." The boy's moan was a stark reminder of our other ticking clock. The morphine would not last forever. His fever was a fire that even in the frigid pipe I could feel radiating from his body just ahead of me. Progress slowed to a near halt. "What is it, Vasily?" I called out, my voice sounding flat and dead in the non-reverberant space. His reply came back, strained, blocked, or partially. A rockfall, old, feels like hardened mud and stones. A cold spike of pure panic, trapped between the dogs behind and a wall of earth ahead. Buried alive. This was the end. "Can you clear it?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "Trying, came the grim reply. "It's solid." I could hear him working, the scrape of metal, perhaps his knife or the butt of his pistol against rock, the grunts of exertion. Each second felt like a minute. Behind me, Ivan was still, listening, conserving energy. We were all completely helpless, our fate in the hands of the stubborn machine gunner at the front. More scraping, a curse, a loud crack as a rock split. "It's moving," Vasily panted. "I've made a hole. It's not wide, but I can get through. We can get through." The relief was so profound, it left me dizzy. The journey resumed, even slower this time, as we had to navigate the newly cleared but still treacherous blockage. I felt Dimitri's body snag and had to reach forward in the blind dark, feeling along his greatcoat until my hand found a jagged rock and guided his leg around it. It was in that moment, in the absolute blackness, that I thought of Kostya, the old farmer. Where was he? Had he made it? Or was his body lying in the snow near the tree line? The weight of his unknown fate was as heavy as the earth above us. I had ordered him to cover us. I had sent him to his probable death. The guilt was a sharp, bitter taste in my mouth. We crawled on. My sense of time was gone. It could have been 20 minutes. It could have been 2 hours. The air grew staler, thicker. Then I saw it. It wasn't light, not really. It was just a lessening of the dark. A spot of faint, uniform gray far ahead. The exit. Hope, fierce and desperate, surged through me, giving a new strength to my burning limbs. "Vasily," I called out, "do you see it?" "I see it," he confirmed, his voice filled with a new energy, moving faster. The circle of gray grew, resolving itself into a definite shape, the end of the pipe. It was still partially obscured, just as Ivan had reported. As we neared, Vasily stopped. "Wait," he commanded. "Let me look." We lay still, a chain of broken men and a concrete tube, holding our collective breath. I could hear Vasily's careful movements as he edged towards the opening. Silence stretched. I pictured German sentries waiting for us, a machine gun aimed at the opening. "It looks clear," Vasily finally whispered back. "Thick woods, a steep slope. I see no one. But the sounds of battle, they are further west now. We are behind them." Behind them. The words hit me with their full weight. We hadn't just escaped. We had been bypassed. We were deep inside enemy-held territory now, cut off completely. "I'm going out," Vasily said. "I'll cover the exit. Send Dimitri." There was a final scrape and rustle, and the light ahead of us grew slightly brighter as Vasily's bulk cleared the opening. "All right, Pyotr, let's go." The final few meters were the hardest, pushing Dimitri's limp form up the slight incline towards the light. Then hands reached in, strong hands, Vasily's hands. He grabbed Dimitri under the arms and with a powerful heave pulled him the rest of the way out. Pyotr scrambled out next. Then it was my turn. I crawled the last meter and pushed myself out of the pipe's foul-smelling mouth, emerging from the gut of the serpent. The shock of the open world was staggering. The light, though only the flat gray gloom of a winter afternoon was blinding after the absolute blackness. The air, crisp and cold, with the scent of pine, was a glorious balm in my lungs after the stale air of the pipe. For a moment, I just knelt there on the snow-covered ground, head down, gasping, my eyes watering. We were out. We were alive. I looked around. We were on a steep, densely wooded hillside. The culvert exit was perfectly hidden by a tangle of hawthorn bushes and a small landslide, just as Ivan had said. Vasily was already in position a few meters away, the DP-28 set up, scanning the woods. Pyotr was hunched over Dimitri, tearing at his bloody trouser leg to examine the wound in the daylight. Ivan was just emerging from the pipe, silent as a shadow, his Mosin held at the ready, his eyes immediately sweeping our rear. We were all there, battered, filthy, exhausted beyond measure, but we were all there. But my relief was short-lived. Sergeant, Pyotr said, his voice tight with a new, sharper fear. Look at this. I crawled over to him. The sight was worse than I had imagined. In the stark gray light, the wound was a mess of torn flesh and dark, congealed blood. But it was the angry red color of the skin around it, the slight swelling, and the faint, foul smell that made my stomach clench. Gangrene, or the very start of it. Dimitri's eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, his gaze unfocused, his lips cracked and dry. "Cold, Sergeant," he whispered, a shiver racking his entire body despite the fever that radiated from him. So cold. We had made it out of the tomb, but looking at the dying boy and the endless, hostile forest surrounding us, I realized our ordeal wasn't over. It had just entered a new, more desperate hell.